Good evening. Once again, to Ideas at Work and Beyond, we are delighted this evening to have live democracy unfold right there in your living room or basement or wherever you are watching this program, because we are bringing to you two fine candidates that are running for state rep for part of Danbury, most of Bethel, and however else this district is broken down. I thought of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and no, I won't read the whole thing, but it does end as follows. It says that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. And without candidates like we have this evening, Dan Carter and Jason Bartlett, willing to put their name, their reputation, their very lives out in the public forum and run for public office, we would not have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So I personally want to thank them for their public service. And I can tell you one thing, at the end of this hour, you will know both of these men better. You will have an opportunity to phone in. We've gone out at great expense, right, Al? Great expense? Great expense. We have gone out to the highways and the byways, the coffee shops, to talk to you, the voters in this district, to see what your questions are for these candidates. And without any further ado, we are going to get started. But we encourage you to phone in. The phone number is 438-2003. Or you can email in, if you're a little sheepish about calling in. The email address is martyheiser@AOL.com. And ask these candidates the questions that you want to have answered so you can be a better voter in this area. Now, we had a drawing, and who was first? You were first. So Dan Carter, you have a 2-minute opening, and then Jason, you'll have a 2-minute opening comment, and then we'll have some questions. You have a minute to answer and a 30-second rebuttal, and let the games begin.
Great.
Dan Carter, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Marty. I really appreciate it. And really, thanks, everybody, for being part of this panel. Jason, thank you for coming out. I know that Marty threw this down on us kind of last minute, said on his show, come on out.
Just learned the rules as we walked in.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And handed us a piece of paper with a 1 and a 2 on it. But
we try to not, stifle it with too much structure. So
right. Well, it is important. I think when we're talking about democracy at work, it's very important. So let me introduce myself. I am Dan Carter. I'm running for state representative in the 2nd district, which is Bethel, Danbury, and Reading. I moved to Connecticut 12 years ago. I chose to come here after I got out of the Air Force. And one of the things I loved about Connecticut was the fact that it offered myself and my family a great place to live, a place that was, I could have a great career. I had many things to choose from. It's one of the most beautiful places with open spaces that I could ever choose. And it was a great place to raise my kids. But over the last 12 years, I've kind of watched those opportunities erode, or at least I felt that way. Personally, when I got out of the Air Force, I was a pilot for 10 years active duty. And when I got out of the Air Force, I decided not to fly for the airlines. I went into the healthcare industry, where I work for a pharmaceutical company. It's been my pleasure to bring great medicines to people's lives to prevent strokes, prevent heart attacks, and things like that. But I've actually had the opportunity to sit by my phone at least 3 times over the last 3 years and get the call to see if I had a job or not. So I think I've been touched by the economy just like everybody has. And specifically in the state of Connecticut, we've had a lot of things happen here over the last 10 years, 12 years, that I think aren't the way we should be doing it. Frankly, I think we've had bad policies. We've got a $19 billion budget now. We're in debt $18 billion. We have $40 billion of unfunded liability. We're not doing the right thing. And I feel like I'm the kind of person that needs to come to the table and make a change.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you. Thank you, Marty. And good evening to everyone. My name is Jason Bartlett. I am the current state representative for District 2. And I feel like I'm the homegrown candidate. I grew up in Reading, went to all the public schools there, graduated from the University of Connecticut, and came back home to the Danbury area and started a small business in Bethel on Greenwood Avenue for about 12 years. I adopted 2 children and raised them here in town. They're graduates, one of Immaculate and one of Bethel High School. And looking to serve for my 3rd term. I'm very proud to be able to run on my record. I think that I'm a different kind of Democrat, a different kind of politician. My number one issue in the legislature has been education reform. I have been willing to take on the special interest to move legislation on education reform, which I believe will, one, bring accountability, bring quality education, and also look out for our taxpayers, because we have 186 failing schools in the state of Connecticut, and we spend a lot of our taxpayer money on those schools, and we need to reform how that's done. I also am very proud that I got across landmark Lyme disease legislation protecting patients and doctors, and I also have a lot of accomplishments, I think, in the district in terms of helping out, whether it be the Bethel Library, the Teen Center, the Reading Girls Boys Club, Road, and I guess that's our first call.
It might be. It could be my wife, but go ahead.
But a lot of local accomplishments as well, and just looking out for our constituents, and I hope that people will give me the opportunity to serve them once again.
Excellent, thank you. Now, our think tank panel here, of course, is Al Robinson, a well-known author, founder, and publisher of Hat City Blog, the blog that strikes terror in the hearts of local politicians, and as well as David Straight, who's a retired commodity trader, also has his own financial planning service, and has emails that he sends out that are very intriguing as well. But without any further ado, caller, are you there? Why don't... Yes. Okay, we'll start with you.
Okay, real quick, thank you very much for coming in, and I hope a lot more candidates for state office will come into our show, because this is what it's all about. One of the things we like to do on this show is we go out to the street and we talk to people within your districts about some of the issues that are on their minds. One of the big things I've heard from people in the second district has to do with money and the budget. Due to the fact that we have a fiscal crisis here in Connecticut, where do you draw the line between curbing spending and making sure that your fair share of dollars comes back towards your district? Because, as you know, a lot of people like to talk about spending problems, but also a lot of people like to talk about the fact that a lot of the money they give up to the state of Connecticut doesn't come back towards their district. So where do you draw the line between those two? And we'll start with Mr. Carter.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So where do you draw the line between spending? Well, first off, you know, there are a lot of great programs out there that we want to make sure that we don't get rid of. The last thing anybody wants to be accused is one of those, you know, slash and burn Republicans and come through and cut unnecessarily. However, there are a lot of things in state government that we really need to take a look at. With a $19 billion budget at this point, and by the way, that was, you know, something that kept getting pushed up and up and up over a long time, and populations remain the same. There are a lot of state things we need to look at. For instance, with the state employees, you know, we have to find ways to curb some of the costs there without limiting service. We can find ways to reduce agencies. We have 43 agencies. We could reduce them to about 11. So these are things that we can do without impacting services too greatly. Now, the other part of that question is, how do you bring things back to the state? Well, one of the things that I want to look at is the educational cost sharing. I think that ratio, it's been changing dramatically ever since it was formed. I think it puts some of our towns at a disadvantage, and that needs to be looked at.
Jason, same question?
Well, I certainly think that this election is going to be about priorities, and the question is, what kinds of priorities is the state of Connecticut going to have going forward, and are we going to make the right kinds of decisions to grow jobs in the state of Connecticut, balance our budget, and still have a safety net so that people who, with this massive unemployment, actually have some services that they can rely on until we grow out of this recession. I think that, you know, too often my opponents or Republicans in general want to say, let's just cut spending, but they never specify what they're willing to cut. I actually am a Democrat who's actually willing to say, let's cut spending, and I'm willing to say what we should cut. We have Yukon branches across the state of Connecticut. I actually think that we need to close at least one of them. I think that every Yukon branch should be self-sustaining. Okay, we lose money on every branch. I actually think that the Department of Consumer Protection should be cut and should be shipped off into other state agencies. The public health should take over the health part. Attorney General should take over the consumer advocacy part. The Secretary of State should be registering all the businesses in the state of Connecticut. I actually think that we need to do things as Democrats that we've been saying that we should do, such as do bulk purchasing for prescriptions with other states. It's something that we have passed a bill to do that the Republican governor has refused to do, and that will demonstrate significant savings across the board. So those are the kinds of ideas that I have, and that's the experience that I bring to the table to actually get into a discussion to make a difference.
Okay, our phone number here is 438-2003, and caller, you have a question for the candidates?
Yes, for Representative Bartlett. I follow politics in Bethel quite a bit, and there's just a question for Jason. There's been a bunch of checks written, but how many actually cleared? Okay, a lot of promises, there's checks coming, there's money coming. I want to know how many actually cleared, if you could let everybody know. And also, did he vote to give Dan Malloy another $2 or $2.5 million after the primary? So I'd just like to hear the answers on those two, and thank you for your time.
Okay, the question he has is some.
I think it's how much money have I...
But checks that were written but weren't cashed, and then this thing about Dan Malloy and.
Well, I don't know what he means exactly. What I think he's trying to ask me is what have I delivered to the district in terms of funding. And I'm very proud of my record, actually, in terms of what I've been able to deliver. For Bethel, for example, $150,000 went to the teen center that's sitting in an escrow account for the town to decide what we want to do with our teen center. The libraries benefit, they got $150,000 of money out of one bond fund, and they got $1 million out of the library bond fund, which I voted to increase the library bond fund max from $500,000 to $1 million, specifically because I knew we had a library with a second floor that was vacant. We have a deal on the table. The unfunded checks that we have a deal on the table is we have $2 million for Danbury to go ahead and sit down with Bethel and potentially purchase Terre Haute. So that money I have gotten in the bond fund, and I fight to keep it there. And I also have $500,000 in the bond fund for Bethel to do downtown economic development. And that doesn't include all the increases that we got for ECS and the fact that I've maintained money for the roads and that kind of thing. So the whole point about Malloy is that I believe that we need to preserve campaign finance. And I did call my opponent a hypocrite for saying that we should dismantle the campaign finance law and not give up the monies because he's participating in campaign finance, as I am. So if you believe in the program, I think you have to take the hard votes to keep it sustaining.
Okay, so you've just been called a hypocrite on television.
My mom was
is that
watching.
true?
He was ready
what
for
are
that.
we talking about?
Am I a hypocrite, or is it true what he said?
Well, is it true what he's saying? I mean, there seems to be some discrepancy
Okay.
in this campaign finance.
I made this very clear when the vote went down, when they overrode the governor's veto, that I'm not necessarily in this case trashing the system. It's the only one we have right now. I think we're all participating in it because we have to be participating in it if we want to make this work.
You don't have to.
Well, I feel like you do have to participate in it because any candidate that's going to go out and raise their own funds when another person's taking the money, it's one of those things where you're putting yourself at a big disadvantage unless you're a millionaire, like Malloy and also
But you
Tom
could
Fuller.
go out and raise the money, and there are candidates running for state representative right now that are not
Right.
participating, Dan.
So-
So to say that you can't is not
Okay,
being
so if
not being honest.
what I'm saying is you can, but I say you put yourself at a disadvantage with your
chose to
candidate.
participate.
You're right, and I did.
Why did you choose to participate
chose
if
to-
you could not participate and not take those public dollars?
Because it makes sense to take them right now because
Because it
everybody
makes
else
sense
is
for
doing it.
you as an individual
You know what,
politician.
Jason, you are doing the same thing.
I know. I
hang-
voted for the
Now,
bill.
You know what? Here's the thing with that. What I had a problem with that was when you overrode the governor's veto, you gave the money to one candidate. You gave $3 million to Dan Malloy. It wasn't about saving the whole system.
Sure it was.
It was not about saving the whole system. It was about giving $3 million to Dan Malloy.
Court said
And that's the way I see it.
the law as was written was unconstitutional, and if we didn't pass a law,
Right.
there would be no system, correct?
what part
and
of
the
that was
monies that you're
unconstitutional?
saying that we gave to Dan Malloy were already allocated for Mr. Malloy. In fact, $2 million more than what was given to him was actually allocated for Mr. Malloy. So to say that we gave him money as if we wrote a special check is, again, not being upfront and honest with the
Okay,
people.
so-
Last word on that, and then we're going to go to Dave Strait. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I wanted to finish one other thing. Last word on that, too, is I disagree with giving the money to Malloy. I don't think it was appropriate. It was benefiting one candidate. And the other thing is, I wanted to mention regarding the $2 million that you've set aside, the way I understood that, that was a deal that you put in for Danbury for them to buy Terre Haute and didn't even tell anybody and the local legislators. And that money, I heard, is gone.
Well, maybe that's your understanding because you just moved to town. But
Just moved to town? I've been there for 6 years. In Bethel.
This is the first
And
time
6 in
you've been
Reading.
active in
Okay.
politics, okay? And you don't have the history. But if you want to regurgitate what our former First Selectman, Mr. Burke, said, then you go right ahead at your own peril because those facts are not accurate. The fact of the matter is that the money is there. It's a great piece of property. It should be preserved as open space. And, you know, I think you should
And I
do your
agree.
homework. Well, then
It should
you
be
should be
preserved as open
supporting. Then
space.
hopefully if you beat me, you'll make the deal happen. How about
Well,
that?
I'm not gonna-
Wouldn't that
I
be
don't-
great?
I don't think
Wouldn't
make
that
the
be
deal-
great for the Bethel taxpayers and for the Danbury residents because we'll have 200 acres of open space.
I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue was you said there's $2 million set aside for Danbury to buy it when nobody had it for sale in the first place. And this was a contention that happened before. And I have no idea where Bob Burke stands on this because I'm not involved with him.
Well, I know where Mayor Boughton stands, and I know Mayor Boughton asked me to secure the monies, and I think that the residents of Danbury in that particular neighborhood would be ecstatic about it, and I think the Bethel taxpayers, especially in this economy, would be ecstatic about getting $2 million and preserving the property.
Hold on one second. Dave Strait.
So
retired commodity trader, Strait Financials.
So I moved to Reading about 7 years ago, and I was told that unless you're a fourth-generation resident, you should keep your mouth shut. And what I think actually is that maybe new ideas are what we need. But let me. This is a soft pitch because everything here really is pretty hypothetical. This is kind of a slow pitch. But let's say. I get together with Marty and I tell Marty, look, you give me $1 million and my grandson will work for your grandson for the rest of his life for free.
Call you then.
That's exactly what we have right now. We have committed, the Connecticut legislature has committed the Connecticut taxpayer to $42 billion in legacy costs and pension pension expenses. So the question becomes, can we sink the entire ship, the entire state of Connecticut, trying to make good on these promises, or isn't it time that we start cutting those pensions?
Okay, let's start with Dan in a minute and a half, and then a minute and a half.
Okay.
Jason.
First off, I don't know that I would at this point advocate cutting the pensions per se, and here's why. Number one, we're in trouble because we haven't funded those pensions. In fact, last year to balance the budget, they underfunded them another $200 million. So I think that's part of our issue. Now, I would advocate making changes to that program. Specifically, what I would say that we do is we freeze pensions. And at some point, we start getting these folks over to more of a 401 type investment, where they're matched. And here's my vision. You have a 22-year-old teacher coming to the system. 22-year-old, they get in a 401, it's aggressively matched, maybe even higher than industry. But when they're 40 years old or 45 and they're looking to send a kid to college or something like that, they can borrow from that fund, and then they can pay themselves back at 9 to 10% interest. It's a better way of doing things, and we're paying for it right as we're using it, instead of making these huge promises.
Jason?
Well, I'm for keeping the promise. I mean, we made regardless of whether or not you like it, this is what, you don't just go in after the fact and start slashing people's pensions. So you're not going to get any support from me on that. What you might get some support going forward is looking at all the benefits that our state workers have right now and renegotiating those benefits. And I think regardless of who becomes the next governor, that's going to have to be on the table. Governor Rell has kind of locked us in to some extent So we need the unions to be willing to come and sit at the table. But if we want to avoid, mass layoffs and furloughs, I think that's something that we're going to have to look at. Well, I always like to do things in a consensual way. So knowing that we can, get some benefits, and actually for the long term, which I think is what your concern is, so that we don't, find ourselves in this position again. I think that it works better if we bring the unions to the table, and so that's what I would advocate doing.
The phone number here is 438-2003. This is participatory democracy in action. You call in, we ask the candidates. Caller, are you there, and what's your question for the candidates?
We're here. I don't have actually a question. I have a statement, Marty, and maybe your guest can answer it for me. All day long, all I've been hearing on the news is how the poverty level is higher than it's been in years and years and years.
1 in 7.
And now I'm listening to campaign finance, people running for governor and everything. I hear millions of dollars being spent in campaign finances for people to represent the constituents. And here, you've got the poverty level so high. Could you explain to me the justice with all this, or have the guests explain that to me, please? Thanks, Marty.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate the question. How about that, Dan? We'll start with you. The poverty level is at an all-time high.
1 in 7.
1 in 7.
Yep.
And I think what the caller is saying is you're taking taxpayer money to run these campaigns. And
Right.
just so we're clear, both of you are participating in this
Right.
program. Neither of you have a professional wrestling empire that throws off millions of dollars that you can finance.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So what about that? First of all, what about the poverty level?
Sure.
And what do you think we can do to reverse that?
Well, first off, the way I understood the question is more an indictment on the campaign finance.
Yeah.
We're spending this money when the poverty is what it is today.
Yeah.
And if you look at the program itself, I think it's around $20 million that we could put back in the hands of the constituents.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be all for abolishing the state financing program. In fact, in the last budget, when the Republicans proposed it, it was part of the budget, but the Democrats passed a different bill and did not include it. So I would be fine with getting rid of it. I don't think it's something we should continue with.
Okay. Jason? I mean, I'm snickering a little bit because both of you are participating in it, and
Yeah.
you say it's an
Well,
awful
that's it.
system, and
That's it.
starting tomorrow, I'm against it.
But I want to clarify though, it did have good intentions when they made it.
Yeah.
I just don't. It was to
Taking
keep special
special
interests
interests
out
out
of
and
it,
some of that.
which I think there are other ways to do that.
Well, this is a lot of cake and eat it too, cake and eat it too, cake and eat it too. And you can't have it both ways. If you're going to run and say that we need to cut spending, for example, to act as if, you're going to support poverty programs is having cake and eat it too. Because what I've experienced in the last 4 years is a governor that was doing slash and burn to every social safety net program, irregardless of even what the economy was. So you can't have it both ways and declare that you're for doing something about poverty, but you want to cut spending. I mean, let's be realistic. We have to grow jobs here. That's the number one way out of this. We have to get our economy moving. That's the number one way out of this. And so we need to use our budget and public policy to help do that and to create a better business climate here in the state of Connecticut so that we can grow jobs. And that will generate more revenue, and that will be the solution. Campaign finance, understand, it's not coming from tax revenue. It's money set aside already that's coming from unclaimed property assets. So to think that somehow we're taking money from Peter to pay Paul, that's just not the case.
Quick rebuttal? Anything? You can pass.
No, not to pass at all. With respect where the money comes from, I think it really doesn't matter where the money comes from. It's money that could be better spent getting our economy back in shape. And the thing that's important is we use our budget wisely, but we aren't using it wisely. We can do both. We can get the economy back, and you can have some resources to help with the poverty level.
I know 5 nonprofits in Danbury that would love it if you just didn't do 2 or 3 of those negative mailings or whatever and donate it to them, Dan, with your piece of, that should be your challenge. That, since you're so concerned about it, don't do that negative, where you darken up my face.
I haven't done any mailings.
No, I know. I'm using past experience,
Okay.
but, take those mailings and take that money and go ahead and donate it to those charities that are really, feeling the pinch this year. I think that's what you should do.
I'm feeling the love. Al, are you feeling the love?
I'm feeling the love.
I'm feeling the love. Al, you have a question.
This feels good. Look, let me ask you a question that's somewhat important because you're in a unique district. Most people in the greater Danbury area, when you think of state reps, they pertain to areas within a city, like the 109 is just Danbury, the 107 is just Danbury. You're in the 2nd district. Your area contains Bethel, but it also contains a part of Danbury as well. And I bring this up because from time to time, there's areas where Danbury and people politicians in Danbury and Bethel the town of Bethel and the city of Danbury are in conflict. Right now, we have a situation with a water tank on Long Ridge Road, where both sides are like, you know what, forget it. We'll just take this to court. We got a problem here. We had the Terry Hart thing a few years ago. What is your take as state rep, where you represent Danbury and Bethel? How do you handle situations where one side isn't getting along with the other side in certain things such as the water tank or Terry Hart or other things that can come up in the future? How do you handle that?
We'll start with you, and then we'll go to Jason.
Okay. I think the bottom line there is leadership. I mean, number one, you're going to have different people, not agreeing, and I think, you're not going to always find consensus. But when you go into these situations, I think I've got a track record of the military, maybe not in Reading, of being a very effective negotiator. I've negotiated contracts all over the United States with respect to DoD fuel contracts, and there were a lot of people who didn't necessarily agree. We didn't have people who wanted our airplanes coming in the wrong place, that kind of thing. So I think it's going to take leadership, and it's going to take somebody who's very effective at bringing together those parties, because at the end of the day, there's only so much a state rep can get involved in the local politics. So it's leadership is what we can do.
Jason?
I agree with Dan. I think it is leadership, and I've been put in those positions several times. But I think you just have to, work with the leaders and try to bring consensus as often as possible. I think what would serve us well right now in terms of the water issue is having Mayor Boughton and First Selectman Knickerbocker sit down along with some of the other members of the planning and zoning and other people that are involved in Board of Selectmen to see if we can come up with a compromise there. And I'm happy to facilitate that, and I've actually been talking to people behind the scenes. I think that part of our job is, sometimes it's better just not to get involved in local stuff, but to, try to lend a hand where we can. I think the other issue that's happening in the same neighborhood is the Leaf Farm issue. Right. And I think that's where, I would use, we only have had 4 people. I know that the city council had a bunch of people come and testify against the Army bringing in that facility, but only 4 people have written. So I called Congressman Murphy's office to kind of find out how do we stop this thing. And what I'll be doing is encouraging people to actually write the letters and to come up with the reasons why it shouldn't
what I read in the paper is that they're cutting that off at September 25th. It seems like a pretty short period of time for people to express. But all right,
they have a 30-day.
The number here again is 438-2003. Please call in with your questions. Caller, you have a question for the candidates?
Yes, good evening. The state of Connecticut is $3 billion in the hole. The projected deficit is going to be $200 billion next year. Is that correct, both candidates?
3.5.
Is that correct?
3.5.
3.5 billion.
That's correct.
3.5.
You cannot tax wealthy people or middle class or businesses enough to bring down the deficit. You're going to have to cut programs and non-essential personnel. Where are you going to cut? What departments are you going to cut? Where personnel is going to be cut? What programs are going to be cut? Rental assistance? What's going on? There are not. Someone of the candidates said we're going to create jobs. No, but no business in their right mind is going to move their personnel or businesses from New Jersey or New York to Connecticut when you're $200 billion in the hole. So you can't go by that. I don't know what candidate said that. I'm in the next room. Where are you guys going to cut? Because there's nowhere else to tax.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you very much. I mean, he brings up a good point. He got a little carried away. I don't think it's quite $200 billion. But
give it a couple years.
No, yeah. At the rate we're going.
The rate we're going, it can happen quick.
But he brings up a good point. I mean, the idea is enough is enough. And I personally harp on the Tax Freedom Day. Of all 50 states, Connecticut has the latest Tax Freedom Day. You have to work from January 1 to April 27th to pay all your state, federal taxes. Now, we had other candidates on here that said, oh, well, we're the richest state, and that's why it looks so bad. It's not really that bad. But people are saying enough. You can't get blood from a rock, and we're not going to tax our way out of this mess, but we're going to have to grow our way out of this mess, and we're going to have to Chris Christie, the governor in New Jersey, what he's doing as far as, cutting things. So I think that's what the caller was asking. Jason, we'll start with you. Where do you see areas in state government that you really, honest engine, can go in and cut and have some substantial savings?
Can't be general. It has to be specific.
Well, I started out thank you for the parameters. So
It's good.
I started out the conversation by actually listing some cuts.
Yeah.
And I think I'm the only candidate thus far to actually say something about what we're going to cut. So I mentioned in higher ed, and I mentioned the Yukon branch. I know that I said consumer protection, which is a whole agency. I'd also look at Homeland Security and public safety and combining that. I believe that there's about $300 million in cuts in off-budget items. So that's, I sat on a subcommittee that looked at all of the off-budget stuff, and we came up with about $300 million that hasn't been actually accepted yet. So there's monies there. And, we'll go from there. You got to take a look at it. In education, I was the one person in the whole Greater Danbury delegation who agreed with the governor when I didn't agree with her in whole, but she wanted a 2.5–3% cut to municipalities, and I had said that we needed to take a 0.5% cut. I was one of the few Democratic legislators that actually, when I first got reelected, said we need to start cutting now and start doing things now, and we waited an extra year to actually get a budget passed, and that hurt us in the end. So I've been one who's been willing to make cuts. I'm one who said that some of the commissions that Dan talked earlier about consolidating commissions. I'm not sure I agree with the numbers that he used, but I do think that the African American Commission and the Puerto Rican and Latino Commission can certainly be combined, and I think that there's other places where that makes sense. And I've agreed with my counterparts across the aisle that we need to do that. So, I don't have a problem talking about specifics, and taking the rap for it.
Okay, Dan, a minute and a half.
Well, okay, first off, as far as cutting, I don't know that it's fair to say you've been that willing to do the cuts yet, because, you and the other Democrats basically raised the budget $373 million this last time around, overrode, I guess, the governor's veto to raise the budget, which put us over $19 billion for the first time. So let's talk about cuts. Some of those things make total sense, and I would agree with some of them. I don't think you're going to combine some of the smaller state agencies and get much bang for your buck. There's not a lot of money there. You're going to have to start looking ways to privatize some of the things that state government does right now. And you're going to have to do this through attrition. And I'm not talking slash and burn, because that's the way every Democrat wants to say what a Republican does. I'm talking about responsible, meaningful vision for a long-term strategy to get Connecticut back on track.
Well, give us specific.
Specifics. Yeah, there you go. What was that? Oh, I thought I was talking to me. One of the things that we need to look at is we need to privatize some of the things that we do on the roads with these major contracts.
How much would that save?
Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. If you look at 55,000 state employees and the numbers of pensions we're giving out there, it's substantial. If you just raise the amount of co-pays that these guys pay, or that on their medicines, and take the 3 furlough days, you can save $2 billion right there. That's actually been out there that we could save a lot of money. So there are very specific ways we can do that. I would not eliminate one of the universities. I'm not for that. However, I would eliminate the Chancellor program and the 170 people that work with them. And I would appoint a small committee or something from different educational institutions to run that.
Jason, rebuttal?
I don't know. You jumped from privatizing to take away people's benefits, but I still didn't hear the specifics. I agree that, and I stated earlier, that the governor needs to sit down with the state unions and work on driving some savings there. I think DOT
But you voted against it in the last bill.
DOT is understaffed for the most part, so I'm not sure that really makes sense. And I don't see any savings with that. So I don't see the $3.5 billion in what Dan just said at all. And I'm not sure we even came up with $100 million there in anything that's meaningful. But this is where the experience that I bring to the table is going to make a difference, and actually going in and getting savings. And and I'm happy and proud of my record, in terms of driving that argument.
Well, I want to say one thing. Let's talk about your record. I mean, the fact that you were in New Haven, you were calling out Merrill because they were pointing out the facts regarding the spending, and you called her basically hypocrites, and you voted with her all the time on every spending bill. You know, the point is, you guys had a chance in this last budget and this last spending that you could have cut it significantly. You could have helped a lot more people with jobs. You could have brought the unions to the table. They didn't want to do it. Nobody had the intestinal fortitude to hit it straight on. So experience or no experience, I don't think that's what it's about at this point. I think people want someone who's going to come in and take a real business look at it and do what's right for the state of Connecticut.
Well, just for the record, I've never called my majority leader a hypocrite. I've only actually called one other politician a hypocrite.
Me.
Right. So I don't know what you're talking about with Denise,
okay.
But you know, the fact of the matter is, we did pass a balanced budget. The governor didn't veto the budget, actually. The governor didn't do anything. Remember that? She wouldn't even take a stand. So
2008.
She took a stand. She
Yeah.
presented a budget, and you guys...
and then she disappeared. She didn't have the gumption to take a stand. And quite frankly, Republicans, if you look at your budgets that you've put forward, have been slash and burn. All they do is say, let's take 6 or 8% off the top on every program. They've never actually looked at what programs work or what programs don't. They haven't really offered real solutions. When the governor has offered solutions that I think that makes sense, I agree with her.
Dave Straight of Straight Financial Services, your question.
Yeah, arguably I am new to Connecticut, only being here 7 years, but my observation that in being here 7 years that the business environment in Connecticut is horrible. It's anti-business all the way home. We're watching companies leave constantly. One of the signs that are evidence of that, I would argue, is high energy costs. We have the highest electricity costs in America. And, you know, when was the last time we built a new plant? How long would it take to build a new nuke or a coal plant? I mean, what can you guys do to bring down energy costs in Connecticut?
Well, we just did an energy bill that allows DPUC to start procuring energy, and I think that will make a difference. I would actually like to see an energy, more of an energy department, and get rid of DPUC as it stands, because I think they're just a bunch of bureaucrats, and they're not about actually procuring energy and trying to put the state in a position to save money on costs. And I think that's a big problem.
I mean, can't we put in coal-fired plants? Can't we build a nuke? Can't we start producing our own energy?
Well, I got to tell you, since we deregulated, the whole purpose of deregulation was to encourage the private sector to produce more energy. And I think that we've gone down that road as much as we can, and I actually think that because we deregulated too much, we have higher energy costs. So I actually think we have to go to some extent in the other direction, because those states that have a better mix have the lowest energy costs, New Hampshire, for example, and I think that's the direction that I would go.
Dan, your response?
Okay, well, the way I understood that, the massive energy bill that came through the very last night of session, that was one of those sneaky bills that came at 3 a.m., put it on the table, and voted on it by 6 a.m. And there are a lot of people who believe that will not address the cost of energy. One of the things that we could have done to address the cost of energy was not borrow, basically, from, you know, we were supposed to have our energy costs go down by 2014. Now we've securitized that, and we've borrowed against it already at a premium, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we're going to pay like $1.1 billion or something out for that. So looking at those numbers, so we had this opportunity already to work on energy. And I think it's going to take a long-term strategy to make this happen.
Okay, we've gone at great expense to get the man on the street interviews, and we're going to go to a lightning round. These are questions that we got from voters this afternoon in Bethel, and these are questions right off the top and concerns that they had, and we want to get your quick response to each of these questions as we go through. Al, you want to set this up?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank the great people down at Molten Job. We're the coolest coffee places in Bethel. I love going down there to get a cup of latte. And we went down there to, hey, a lot of people
Is that a shameless advertisement?
Very shameless.
Show them your T-shirt. No.
So we went down there and got some people because that's right there, Bethel, 2nd District. It's a wide section of people. You got liberals, conservatives, and people right there in the middle. So we got a good crop of questions for you. And we have it on video, so without any further ado, here comes the first question, and we'll just get your brief response to the questions.
Oh, we're going to see a tape?
That's a man on the street.
There's no sound.
We need sound. We need sound. We're here at Molten Java with some of the good citizens of Bethel, Connecticut. And I've just met Janet, and you had a question for our candidates tonight.
Yes, when are they going to pave Mountain Goal Avenue? It's a terrible road. And winter's coming. We need a new road.
Come on, guys. What's your response to that? Thank you very much. Yeah. This is bedrock politics, but what was the street that you mentioned?
I think it was Mountainville Avenue.
I didn't catch which one.
Well, basically, you know, if you're from Bethel, you know there's torn up roads there. What are you going to do about it?
Absolutely. Jason, we'll start with you.
Well,
potholes, baby, potholes.
That's man on the street, man.
All
maybe I
politics
could get
is
you
local.
guys to go, and we could get a pail and start, making it happen.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the roads are a local issue, so that's where we get to say the roads are a local issue outside of bringing the money to town, of which I did preserve bringing the town aid monies to Bethel, and happy to assist in going further on that. But that's, I think, First Selectman is going to be going to the town with a bonding package, and he has a plan, a 3 to 5 year plan in terms of actually maintaining the road. So that's where that stands.
I think that, the best way that we can help influence that, like he said, it is a local issue in the sense, but what we can do to help is not pass mandates. If we want meaningful municipality aid to go through there or something to help them out, we've got to stop passing laws that basically make them spend more money, especially in a time right now. And I hear the road issue coming up all over, Danbury, Bethel, even Reading.
I promise not to pass road maintenance mandates. I don't remember when we did that, but man, if you could go find that in my record, I tell you.
We're not talking about road maintenance mandates. We're talking about all the other mandates that we pass down on towns that basically they have to follow.
Well, you made
Cost
that
money.
work, so.
All right, I don't know. I don't
you
think
did
that
too.
lady's going to like that response on that because I
think so.
I don't know. Well, okay, let's
Maybe
go
Jason
to
and I will show up outside.
Al probably knows where that pothole is,
We'll go
too.
fix the
Next
pothole.
question on the man on the street interview, if we have that queued up, in such a way that we could hear
2
it.
T's on Bartlett.
We're here with Tracy, and she had some questions about the Connecticut economy. Your thoughts?
I've been unemployed for about a year. A lot of my friends are out of work. There's no jobs in Connecticut, especially in Danbury. What will you do about that?
Excellent question. Question. My heart sort of went out with to this lady. She said she had been unemployed for some time, and you could tell it was a poignant moment. Dan, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
What's the answer to the job? I mean, we've lost 35,000 jobs. There's been zero job growth over the last decade. We're the only state in the union that
2
can
decades.
claim that. 2 decades.
2
with
decades,
no job.
20 years.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And we are the only state that can claim that distinction. So obviously, if we want to get things back on track, we've got to do something aggressive. Unfortunately, it's going to take a while. One of the things we need to do is better work with small businesses. A better small business loan program that we can give them more money, better tax incentives and credits to get people back to work. Those are 2 things we can do right away.
Jason?
Well, actually, we just passed a bill to do just that. We increased the small business loan fund. We put more money in that. We looked at all the tax credits that we have and began to reorganize that. Economic development is going to be going out with an angel investor program in the next couple of months where individuals can act as venture capitalists and invest in small businesses. I'd like to see us going forward also look at intellectual property type companies and offer more loans and tax credits for them, because those are the new companies, that's the new industries that we need to come, because that's where you really grow the jobs. Is small businesses grow jobs, but the new businesses actually, when you're looking at a macro plan, do that. I think that we do need to coordinate our tourism here. I think both candidates are talking about that. When I go down to Bridgeport and I see 14 acres on the shoreline, it's just decimated. There's nothing happening there. And I think about, wow, this is an opportunity to take this piece of property and connect it to New Haven and connect it to Stamford and use water taxis and things like that to drive tourism. I mean, that's the kind of thinking that we need. We need to make sure we did the film tax credit, for example, but we didn't look at our community colleges and make sure that they were educating folks to actually get the jobs for the films that are coming into our state. So that's something that I've worked on, is to try to make sure that we match up and integrate all of these things that we got to work on.
Well, real quick, regarding tourism, small thing. How come you voted to increase the hotel tax? If we want to help tourism, let's not raise the cost of people coming here by these arbitrary fees and taxes.
Well,
and they didn't support the fact that we needed to get rid of the business entity tax.
Well,
of
if you look
$250.
at hotel taxes, you will see that that has never driven down tourism. I mean, New York has the worst hotel tax probably in the world, and everybody's going there. The reason why we did the hotel tax is because you have local governments that all they have to rely on is the property tax, and they need more options. So the hotel tax offered another option for local governments to bring in some revenue so that our property taxes don't raise. So to me, that was a smart decision in terms of public policy, because we weren't going to hurt the tourism industry, yet we were going to give our localities another stream of income so that it gives some relief to the homeowners.
I just disagree. Anytime we're raising fees and taxes right now, given this economy, it's not a good idea.
Okay, we have a couple other questions from some constituents. Registered voters all. Al?
Yeah, we have another question from the Molten Java people. So, people.
We're here at the coffee shop on Greenwood Avenue in Bethel, and I'm here with my new best friend in the world, Trish. And Trish, we were just talking about the economy and job creation. What are your thoughts for the candidate?
Well, my question is, Connecticut is the only state in the entire union that has actually lost jobs within the decade. And we're driving people away from Connecticut, and I want to know what would be done to actually bring jobs into Connecticut rather than raising tax rates, just creating employment and creating jobs for people to actually pay taxes.
Excellent question. We've lost jobs over the last 10 years, and what are you guys going to do about it? There you have it. I don't know who that other guy is, but that lady was making a lot of sense. No, I mean, we can kind of laugh about it, but it's one of those gallows you laugh or cry. But, the public policy that you guys come up with in Hartford, whoever's going to be there, really affects people's lives. If Connecticut is considered the most business-unfriendly state in the nation, I want to tell you something. These companies don't have to be here. They can pick up and vote with their feet faster than make your head spin. They don't have to. BMW doesn't have to come and build a plant in Connecticut. Sikorsky sort of has their roots down here, but they don't have to add on to that factory. They can go to where it's business friendly. Boehringer Ingelheim, we kiss their feet in Ridgefield because of the revenue that comes in there. But they don't have to do their next generation of AIDS medication here. It's only if we make them feel welcome with policy and what have you. And when you don't, and these companies leave, you get what they're talking about. But your response to that, we've been talking about it already, but Jason, we'll start with you.
No, I mean, that's the number one issue, is how are we going to grow jobs?
Yeah.
And I think as a state we need to think about what are the emerging industries and how are we going to cultivate them and make it happen. I mean, I think UConn, when they did the UConn Hospital up there in Farmington, we created zones so that we could bring in more biomedical monies and research and that kind of thing. And I think that's the kind of smart thinking that we have to have. So, and we need to compete with neighboring states. I mean, you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that our tax structure is below on the income tax. We need to make sure our business taxes are below other states. I personally like to see us get rid of the manufacturing tax that we have. It's like 2%. I'd like to see that go. But at the time that we're doing all this, we still have to balance our budget. So, it is a balancing act, but I think jobs have to be priority number one.
Dan?
Well, I tell you what, we agree on something. I mean, jobs definitely have to be priority one. And unfortunately, we've seen jobs leave here for a long time. Now, one of the things is we have the worst tax environment that there is. Last year we raised taxes again, $1.4 billion. we keep raising fees. So far, the Democrats have been unwilling to come to the table with a more aggressive jobs package. Things like getting rid of the business entity tax that I mentioned. One of the things the Republicans came out with, and I think it's a great idea, is fuel cell technology. But nobody wants to get involved in it, and it was left out of the Democratic bill. So there are a lot of things we can do out there. I do believe in the zones. I think that makes sense. You know, what you're doing there, that's great. But it doesn't go far enough, and obviously we've let this happen over a long period of time.
Okay, the phone number here again is 438-2003. Caller, you had a question for the candidates. Go right ahead.
Yeah, first, I got to make a statement, then I have the question. Today, I'm a registered Republican. I don't care who you are, Republican, Democrat, Liberal, Green Party, I don't care who you are. I'm voting for the person and what you stand for and what you're going to do for us. I'm tired of politics and parties as usual. It's the people. Now, my question is, you're from the State House, okay? I understand that you got together and tried to convince Blumenthal, or said that he should appeal with the other states this health care bill that we have. Now, I'm also hearing that Blumenthal went for cap and trade. You're talking about energy costs, energy policies, jobs.
I'd pin 'em down.
If the Attorney General, that I'm assuming the State House went and approached him to derail this, how do you think we're going to get anywhere if cap and trade gets in? Where does your energy bill or energy costs and jobs come in?
Excellent question. Thank you very much. I'll put that to the candidates. What about that? Do you think Blumenthal should join in with, 20 other states that are coming out against Obamacare? Jason, we'll start with you.
Oh, it's about Obamacare?
I wouldn't sure either. Those cap and trade.
It's a legitimate question. Answer the question. These are our viewers.
We're not running for Congress. That's my
Give us your input on that.
Paving, well, I have no problem doing that. I just want to make sure. It's very important. Paving roads, go beat up the first selectman and your mayor.
Right.
You know, cap and trade and Obamacare is a federal issue, and as much as, you know, I know Dan was running for a little while, but, you know, we're running for the State House.
Don't you have Blumenthal on your speed dial or something like that?
No, I really don't.
All right.
Should we just skip to the next question?
Quickly, give us your opinion on Obamacare.
The issue for us going forward really is how are we going to integrate our health care with whatever the federal government has. And I think that that's an important question. We have a pooling bill that we can use to, and allow people to buy in. And you know, the whole thing with, you know, not having pre-existing conditions and not discriminating against people, those are the kinds of things that as we go forward as a legislator, that's going to be our responsibility to figure out how Connecticut's going to fit into this puzzle. And I think we're well positioned to do that.
Dan?
Well, there's a lot to see yet. You know, 2014, when most of the stuff starts happening with Obamacare, we're going to know a lot more. I think one of the big concerns right now, especially with when Sustanet came through, is, you know, how you're going to look at that risk pool, you know, and what's it going to do to everybody's costs. Obamacare, as it stands, I think is a mess. It went the wrong way. It gave government power of health care instead of individuals. As far as cap and trade, I'm against it.
Okay.
How's that? You keep going with
We're going to
this.
go lightning round here. Lightning, because we don't want you got 2-minute closing argument. Lightning real quick. Dave?
Wanted to say, Jason,
Quick
thanks a lot for your support on the Lyme, addressing the Lyme issue and taking that seriously. Fairfield County is really suffering with that. 2 weeks ago, a highly recognized and credible organization called the Fairfield County Municipal Deer Management Alliance, which represents Fairfield County and is appointed by the selectmen and respective mayors in Fairfield County, produced a study that said Fairfield County is spending $180 million a year combating high deer densities. What can we do to bring deer numbers down in Fairfield County?
Quick answer, Jason. We'll start with you, then Dan.
I support the Sunday hunting. And I think the DEP has to have DEP and DPH, quite frankly, have to have a comprehensive policy on Lyme disease and on deer management, which we don't have. So I would support those efforts.
Dan?
I also support what the DEP is doing with the Sunday hunting. I would also go back and reduce the sportsman's fees, because they just increased those about 35%. I'd go back on that.
Al, your lightning round?
All right, real quick, and again, thank you very much for coming to the show today. We really appreciate it. One of my big pet peeves is transportation. I'll say it for 1,000,000 times. The Metro North line, the Danbury line, is just atrocious. do you support increasing the rail line up towards New Milford in order to bring more people onto the railways and maybe spur economic development in that area?
Dan, we'll
Which
start
one
with you, real quick.
We'll be looking at each other. Yes.
Okay, Jason?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we have...
That's a lightning round, baby.
I'm feeling the love.
There's a lot of love here.
Okay, you're gonna start with your closing statement. You have 2 minutes, and then you'll have the final closing statement. So please, take it away.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time to be here. It really is, it's a great time, and Jason, thank you for coming. Obviously, what I bring to the table is I bring a fresh perspective. Yes, I didn't grow up in Connecticut. I came to Connecticut by choice. I had plenty of places I could have lived. I decided on coming to Connecticut and making a difference. I have the opportunity now to serve more. I spent some time on the Parks and Recreation Commission there. I've had an opportunity to serve. I work for the Air Force Academy part-time. I'm dedicated to my integrity, my service before myself, and excellence in everything I do. And by the way, those are Air Force values. So I believe that we can make a huge difference in Connecticut. It's not all about who to blame, and not how we got here, but it's about changing the policies in this state by letting people have somewhere where they can come, open businesses, not have the anti-business climate that we have now, and places where we can raise our family. I'll stop right there.
Jason?
Thank you, Dan, for coming and debating. I think it's important that we talk about the issues for our district. I would just go back to my beginning and say, I'm calling myself the homegrown candidate not because, I think that you have to spend a certain amount of time in the area, because believe me, I faced the same thing when I was running. And I was coming from Reading and living in Bethel, so it was, but it's about, my roots in the community and how much I care and how much passion I have about why I'm actually doing this. I don't think that I've been there for that long, quite frankly. I think that I have the fresh perspective still. And I think that I've been willing to be a legislator who's willing to take some risks to go outside the box. And I go back to the education reform because the teachers' unions were upset with me. And I worked that bill to come up with a compromise, I think, to really do something about education in the state of Connecticut. I think that systematically, education, there's some problems. Not here necessarily in Reading and Bethel, although we have some problems, some schools in Danbury that are not making the grade in terms of No Child Left Behind. But just, we spend a lot of money as taxpayers that go into that state budget for failing schools. And we have to begin to take on the system. So if I'm a Democrat who's willing to do that on education, then it crosses over into other areas. Sometimes I'm willing to stand alone to get things done. And that's why I would ask people to stand with me and to vote for me on Election Day. I have the experience. And I'm willing to make the hard choices and the hard decisions. So, thank you.
We open the show tonight with the closing remarks from Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. This nation under God shall have a new rebirth of freedom. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Our democracy is dependent on people like Dan Carter and Jason Bartlett with 2 T's, being willing to put their name out there and run for office. I hope you had a chance to get to know both these candidates better, and please, by all means, come out and vote. Join us again next week, where we may have the aforementioned professional wrestling executive. We're still working on it, and we'd like to have Mayor Bowden come in too, but he's a little afraid of you.
Aww.
So hopefully Mayor Bowden will show up, and if he shows up, Linda McMahon will be here. But thanks again to the 2 candidates for joining us. Really appreciate it very much. And everyone, please get out and vote. Elections are right around the corner. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
See you, man.